I came across this interesting question online that asks, how tall is the cone? So here we have two cones. One is right side up, the other one is upside down. And let's say there's some water in it, and the volume of the blue part in this first cone is the same as the volume of the blue part in the second cone, right? The volume of the water doesn't change, it's fixed, except that when you, let's say, place it flat on a table, it looks like this. But then when you invert it upside down, it will look like that. So the volume of the water, the blue part, is the same. What is interesting is that we need to find out what the height of this cone is, so how tall it is. And no, you cannot just say 2 plus 8. Okay, this is not how it works, because how do you know that this is 8 and that this is 2? Will it be true that if this blue cone, right, this blue part over here is also a cone, if it has a height of 8, and this blue part over here, this is called a frustum, right? If it has a height of 2, will they have the same height? And no, that is not true. Okay, so we cannot just add the two heights together. Now, if this was a rectangle, right? If this was a rectangular prism, I would say, no, not even. If it's a rectangular prism, even if I invert it, it's gonna be the same. So for rectangular prisms, let's say I have some water here, and the height, let's say it's 2. If I invert it, make it upside down, the water is gonna look something like that. Over here is gonna look something like that. This height is still gonna be 2, right? Because the volumes have to be equal to each other. So actually, in this case, and for the rectangular prism, you can't just add. You can't just say 8 corresponds here and then 2 corresponds here. Okay, because 8 is the height of this cone, and then 2 is not the height of this cone. Okay, it's the height of this particular frustum. But anyways, let's actually get on to how to solve this problem. Okay, so I'm gonna start with the second cone. Actually, it doesn't matter. You can start with the first cone, the second cone doesn't matter. And I'm just gonna label this height of the blue cone, the smaller cone, as x. And I'm just gonna say that total height is gonna be h for the cone. And now I have it where 2 plus x is equal to h. Okay, so ultimately we're trying to find what h is for this question. 2 plus x is equal to h. This implies that x is equal to h minus 2. So we need things in terms of h's, right? Because that's what we're trying to solve for. Okay, so I'm going to use some common ratios here. I know that, and then I'm going to label the radius of the circle, of the base of the cone, which is the circle. I'm going to call it radius r. Okay, radius r. And then I'm going to call this radius of the blue cone little r, and the radius of this cone with height 8 to be little s. Okay, so there's a lot of variables right here, I know, but in the end, we're just going to make sure those variables are all gone. So for now, let's start with the second cone. So now I'm going to use similar triangles over here, or similar shapes, okay? Because we have the radius of the large cone, which is capital R, to the height of the cone h is going to equal to the radius of the blue cone, little r, to the height of the blue cone, x. Okay, so this is regarding similar triangles, similar shapes, because, so this is 9 degrees, this is 9 degrees. The ratio from how much you shrink r to little r by is the same as how much you shrink r to x by. So now over here, we get that little r is going to equal to r times x divided by h. Okay, so then I'll call this blue part volume. Actually, I'm gonna say, I'm gonna call it capital V for the volume. Okay, so volume is, but I'll call it volume 1. Okay, I'll call it volume 1. So I'll call this portion volume 1. Okay, and then I'm gonna call this empty, this air portion, or this non-blue portion, I'm gonna call this part volume 2. And we see here that volume 1 plus volume 2 has to give me the total volume of the cone, because if this blue part is volume 1, then this blue part is also volume 1, and then that means this empty part is also volume 2. Okay, I'm not going to use the volume formula for the frustum, okay, because we're just going to try to use cones, volume for cones for now. This is what we know so far, and I actually just don't know what the volume of the frustum is at the top of my head. I could derive it, but that is probably for another time. But for now, we can just stick with the volume of a cone, okay, which is pi times the radius of the cone, the big cone, right, the full cone, which is capital R, pi r squared h, divided by 3. Okay, so now let's just find V1 and V2 individually, which is what we are trying to do here. So volume 1 is pi radius. What's the radius of the blue cone? Little r. And then what's the height of the blue cone? X divided by 3. So this is going to equal to pi, and then I'm going to call this x over 3. And what's r squared? R squared means I square all of this, so it's going to be r squared x squared over h squared, which is equal to pi r squared x cubed divided by 3h squared. Okay, cool. So now let's move on to now the first cone now. Okay, I'm gonna call this portion little y. So I get that 8 plus y is going to be the height, which implies that y is equal to h subtract 8. So again, we're going to use similar shapes, similar triangles now. So again, r divided by h, the radius of the big cone to its height, is going to be the radius of, now, or looking at this cone now, so then it's going to be s divided by the radius, the height of the cone, which is 8. So which implies that s, the radius for this cone, is going to equal to 8r over h. So then we have that volume 2 is equal to, so volume 2 is again a cone, so pi radius of this cone is s squared, and then the height is, so the radius is s, and then you square it, and then the height is 8, so times 8 divided by 3, and that is equal to 8 pi over 3, and then s squared means I square all of this, which is 64 r squared divided by h squared, which equals to, well, 64 times 8 is going to be 512. Okay, so 64 times 8, 2, 48 plus 3 is 51. Okay, so 512. Or you know that 8 is 2 cubed, 64 is 2 to the 6, so this is 2 to the 9, 2 to the 9 is 512. Okay, if you just keep on multiplying 2 by itself 9 times, you get 512. Pi r squared over 3h squared. So now we see here that we have volume 1 and we have volume 2. So volume 1 is all of this, and then volume 2 is all of this. And it's really nice because of the fact that volume 1 and volume 2, their denominators are the same, 3h squared. So if we want to add them together, volume 1 plus volume 2 is equal to v, which equals to pi r squared, h over 3, which equals to, you just add these two together. So because they have a common denominator, I'm just going to combine them to say 3h squared, and then pi capital R squared x cubed plus 512 pi r squared. Okay, so then right over here, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to factor out pi r squared. So pi r squared from the numerator, I have x cubed plus 512 all over 3h squared. Now it's really interesting because we have a chain of equal signs. Okay, we have a chain of equal signs. We have pi r squared over 3, and over here we also have pi r squared over 3. So what does that mean? It means that since this is equal to all of that, we can essentially divide pi r squared over 3 on both sides. Right? We're allowed to do that. R is positive, so pi r squared over 3 is a positive number. We divide positive on both sides, no problem. Divide negative on both sides, no problem. Divide 0 on both sides, that's a problem. Okay, so this implies what we have is that h is going to be, so this h is equal to x cubed plus 512 divided by h squared. Okay, so I'm essentially looking at the portion that is not pi r squared over 3. So I'm equating these to be equal to each other, set them equal to each other. So now we see here that if we multiply h squared on both sides, I get that h cubed is equal to x cubed plus 512, which actually equals to, well, what is x equal to? Right at the beginning, x is equal to h minus 2. So I said earlier, we need to make sure things are in terms of h. That's what we're trying to solve for. So h subtract 2, that whole thing is cubed, plus 512. What does this imply? This implies that h cubed subtract h minus 2 cubed, this is equal to 512. Now, this is equal to, now at this point, you can use the difference of cubes formula, right, which is a cubed minus b cubed is equal to a minus b times a squared plus ab plus b squared. You could do this. Essentially, h is my a, and then my h minus 2 is my b. You could do that, or you could just expand out h minus 2 cubed, and then that whole thing is taken away from h cubed. Okay, either way works. I'm going to use my difference of cubes, okay? So h cubed minus h minus 2 cubed is going to be h minus h minus 2, so a minus b. So h minus h minus 2 times a squared, so a is h, so a is h squared, plus ab, so h times h minus 2, and then plus b squared, so plus h minus 2, whole thing squared, closing brackets. So h minus h minus 2 is just 2, okay? If you distribute negative, you have h minus h plus 2. And then here we have h squared plus, distribute the h, we get h squared minus 2h plus, and then h minus 2 holding squared is h squared minus 4h plus 4. Okay, this is not just h squared minus 2 squared. We must minus 2 ab, right? 2 times 2 times h, right? So this is minus 4h. Don't forget that. Okay, which is equal to 2 times, so h squared plus h squared plus h squared is 3h squared, minus 2h minus 4h is minus 6h, and then plus 4. Which implies, now remember this whole thing is equal to 512. So this times 2 is 512, divide 2 on both sides. Half of 512 is 256. So we get that 3h squared minus 6h plus 4, 256. Now we need to bring the 256 to the other side, to the left-hand side. We get 3h squared minus 6h plus 4 minus 256 is equal to 0. And now 4 minus 256, that is going to be minus 252. Actually, I'll just do this in the next step. So this is equal to 3h squared minus 6h. So minus 6h minus 252. Okay. Oops. Okay. We can use the quadratic formula to find out what h is. Okay, because at the moment I cannot factor this at the top of my head. I'm doing 3 times 5, 252 here. Like my basic facts don't go to that high. So let's just use the quad formula. I can't tell at the moment, and my math teacher in high school always says, if you look at it and you go through your head and you can't think of stuff for the next 15 seconds, after 15 seconds, just use the quad formula. Okay, so h is equal to negative b, which is negative 6, which is positive 6, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 6 times negative 6, negative 6 whole thing squared is 36, minus 4a is 3, c is 252, all over 2a, so 2 times 3 is 6. And that is equal to 6 plus or minus the square root of, oops, this should be negative 252. Okay, that's the c value. So we have 36 plus 12. Okay, so this is 12 times, so the two negatives becomes a positive. We have 252 multiplied by 12. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 5 is 10. 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1 is 5. 1 times 2 is 2, so this is like 10 times 2 is 20, essentially. 1 times 5 is 5, 1 times 2 is 2. Add them up. 4, 2, this is 0, this is 3. So, is this? Oh, yes. Yes, this is good. Okay, so we have 36 plus 30, 24. All over 6. 6 plus or minus. So essentially we have the square root of, so let's see here, 24 plus 36, add the 4 to 36, you get 40, 40 plus 20 is 60. So 3060 all under square root, which is equal to, now 360 is very interesting. 360 is actually equal to 4 times 9. I actually did this beforehand. So 4 times 9 times 17 times 5. Okay? So we are, if you take the square root of 3060, that's the same thing as taking the square root of all of these numbers multiplied together. So square root of 4 times the square root of 9, which is 2 times 3, which is 6 square root, and then 17 times 5 is 85. Okay, this is equal to just the square root of each of these. So, but we see here that this is 2 times 3, and then this you cannot do anything because these are prime numbers, right? They definitely don't have they're definitely not perfect squares. So 17 times 5 is 85, and that's how you get 6 root 85. So here we get 6 plus or minus the square root of 85 all over 6. Oops, 6 root 85 all over 6, which is equal to 6 over 6 is 1, plus or minus, and then 6 over 6 again is 1, and then square root of 85. Okay, now the square root of 85 is going to be greater than 9, which is the square root of 81. So we definitely don't want the negative solution because h is height, which is positive. So this is extraneous solution. Okay, so we just take the positive solution. So h is equal to 1 plus the square root of 85, okay, which is like 10 point something centimeters. Okay, so that is very, that's not a nice number, but there you have it. Okay, so this is very cool. All right.